You really don't belong here, Catherine, my mother-in-law, Margaret said, her perfectly manicured nails gripping her coffee cup. Christmas is a time for real family, and after what happened with the company, well, she trailed off, letting the implied accusation hang in the air. I sat across from her in her immaculate living room, surrounded by expensive holiday decorations, and the suffocating weight of 5 years of barely concealed hostility. My name is Catherine Chen Roberts, and at 35, I had just been uninvited from my husband's family Christmas celebration. I am real family, Margaret. I'm David's wife, I replied, keeping my voice steady, despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. She laughed, a cold sound that held no warmth. A wife who cost her husband his position in the family business. Please, if you truly cared about this family, you would have kept quiet about those discrepancies in the books. Ah, there it was, the real reason for my banishment. 3 months ago, as the company's financial advisor, I'd discovered significant irregularities in the accounts, irregularities that pointed directly to my brother-in-law Thomas's creative accounting. When I brought it to the board's attention, the family had closed ranks around him, forcing David to resign instead. Those discrepancies were fraud, Margaret, and you know it. Thomas was embezzling company funds. He was protecting the family's interests, she snapped. Something you clearly don't understand. David was supposed to keep you in line, but he's always been weak when it comes to you. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Is that what you told him, that he's weak for supporting his wife's integrity? I told him the truth, that he chose an outsider over his own blood, and now, you're both paying the price. She set down her cup with a decisive clink. The family Christmas celebration is at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Don't come, I've already told David he can attend alone. As I drove home, my hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. David and I had built a life together, weathering his family's disapproval of his choice to marry someone who wasn't from their social circle. I'd worked my way up in their company, earning my position through merit rather than nepotism. And now, because I refused to be complicit in fraud, I was being erased from family traditions. David was waiting when I got home, his face tight with concern. How bad was it? Your mother has officially uninvited me from Christmas, I said, hanging up my coat. Apparently I'm not real family. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I knew meant he was frustrated. This is ridiculous. I'll talk to her. Don't, I said, touching his arm. You know it won't help. She's made up her mind. Then I won't go either, he declared. We'll have our own Christmas. I shook my head. No, you should go. They're still your family, and refusing to attend will only make things worse. I didn't add that his absence would just give them more ammunition against me, more proof that I was destroying their precious family unity. Kate, he said softly, using the nickname he knew I loved. You're my family too. I know, I replied, managing a smile. And that's why I have a plan. He raised an eyebrow. What kind of plan? The kind that might make your mother finally understand what family really means. I walked to our home office, pulling out a box of old documents I'd been saving. Remember when I first started at the company, when your father was still alive? David nodded, following me. Dad always said you reminded him of himself, someone who worked their way up through determination rather than connections. Well, I said, opening the box, he left me something before he died, something I've been saving for the right moment. Inside was a letter, slightly yellowed with age, and a small wrapped package with strict instructions written on top, to be opened on Christmas 2025. William Roberts. David's eyes widened. Dad left you something. Why didn't you tell me? He made me promise to wait, said timing was everything. I held up the letter, and now, I think I understand why. As I explained my plan to David, I saw the worry in his eyes slowly transform into understanding, then determination. His father had always been different from the rest of the family, a self-made man who valued integrity over appearances. Maybe, just maybe, his final gift would help them remember what he had tried to teach them. Are you sure about this? David asked when I finished explaining. I nodded. Your father knew his family better than anyone. He must have had a reason for arranging things this way. What we didn't know then was just how profound that reason would turn out to be, or how one small package would shake the Roberts family to its core. The week before Christmas was tense. Margaret had apparently spread the word about my banishment, because the usual holiday cards and party invitations from David's siblings and cousins stopped arriving. Only Thomas's wife Jessica, who had always been kind to me, sent an apologetic text. I'm sorry about all this. I tried to talk to them, but you know how they get. I did know. The Roberts family closed ranks around their own right or wrong. It was what had allowed Thomas's fraud to go unchecked for so long, and what had made my position as a whistleblower unforgivable. David came home one evening, looking particularly exhausted. Thomas cornered me at work today, he said, loosening his tie. Tried to convince me to sign a statement saying you misunderstood the accounting discrepancies. And I asked, though I already knew the answer. I told him to stick his statement where the sun doesn't shine. He pulled me close. I don't care what they say, you did the right thing. On December 23rd, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. David's father's package sat on our kitchen counter as I carefully wrote out cards to accompany it. William Roberts had been clever in his instructions, knowing exactly when this revelation would be most needed. The courier will deliver it tomorrow morning, I told David, just in time for their Christmas Eve gathering. He picked up the package, turning it over in his hands. I still can't believe Dad did this. He always said he had a way of seeing around corners. He saw this coming, I said softly. He knew eventually the family would face a choice between appearances and integrity. That evening, Margaret called David. I could hear her sharp tone through the phone as she reminded him about the family dinner. And please, don't make a scene about Catherine's absence. Everyone agrees it's for the best. After he hung up, David looked at me worriedly. Maybe I should tell them about Dad's package, prepare them somehow. I shook my head. Your father was specific about how this should happen. We need to trust him. Christmas Eve morning dawned bright and cold. I watched from our window as the courier delivered the package to the Roberts family mansion. David had already left for the family gathering, leaving me with a tight hug and a promise to call if things got too uncomfortable. Around noon, my phone started buzzing with messages from various family members. What is this? Thomas, how dare you? Margaret, what's going on? Jessica. I didn't respond to any of them. William's instructions had been clear. Let them open it together at the traditional Christmas Eve dinner. David called at 4 p.m. Mom's trying to cancel Christmas dinner, he said, sounding both amused and stressed. She's convinced the package is some kind of revenge plot. Tell her to read her father-in-law's letter again, I replied. The one that came with the package. The next call came from Jessica. Catherine, she whispered, Thomas is losing it. He saw the date on the package and realized it's from William. He's terrified. Good, I thought, though I kept that to myself. By 6 p.m., I knew they would all be gathered in the Roberts family dining room, the mysterious package sitting under their elaborate Christmas tree. William's letter would have made it clear. The package must be opened at dinner, with everyone present. David texted me updates. Mom's barely touching her food. Thomas keeps staring at the package like it might explode. Even the cousins are quiet. At 7 p.m., the time William had specified in his letter, my phone rang. It was Margaret, her voice shaking. You knew about this all along, she demanded. All these years. William asked me to wait, I replied calmly. He said there would come a time when the family would need to remember what really matters. There was a long pause, filled with the muffled sounds of chaos in the background. We're opening it now, she said, finally. David says you should be here for this. I smiled, grabbing my coat. I'll be there in 15 minutes. As I drove to the Roberts mansion, I thought about William Roberts, the man who had built his company from nothing, who had recognized in me a kindred spirit, and who had somehow known his family would one day need this reminder of what true integrity meant. What waited in that package would change everything, not just for me and David, but for the entire Roberts family. William's final gift was about to teach them all a lesson about what family really means, and it was far more powerful than any of us could have imagined. When I arrived at the Roberts mansion, the usual pristine order had dissolved into chaos. The family was gathered in the living room, the unopened package sitting on the coffee table like a live bomb. David immediately came to my side, taking my hand. No one's touched it yet, he whispered. They've been waiting for you. Margaret stood up, her usual composure cracking. Since this apparently involves you, perhaps you should do the honors. I looked around the room. Thomas sat rigid in his armchair, his face pale. The cousins huddled together on the sofa, while Jessica gave me an encouraging nod. With steady hands, I unwrapped William Roberts' final gift. Inside was a leather-bound ledger and a USB drive, along with another letter. As the family patriarch's familiar handwriting filled the room with his presence one last time, I began to read aloud. My dear family, if Catherine is reading this, then my predictions about the company's future have come true. I built this business on integrity, not just profit, but I've watched with growing concern as our family's values shifted after my retirement. Thomas, my son, I knew about your creative accounting long before I died. I kept detailed records, which you'll find in this ledger. But instead of exposing you, I chose to wait, to give you a chance to right your own wrongs. You chose differently. Catherine saw what I saw, that our company was becoming something I never intended. When I hired her, I recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood that true success comes from doing what's right, not what's easy. Inside this USB drive, you'll find two things. First, evidence that would have implicated not just Thomas, but several board members in financial fraud 5 years ago. Second, documentation showing how Catherine tried to quietly correct these issues for years, before finally having to come forward. She protected this family far longer than any of you deserved. The room was silent, except for Thomas's sharp intake of breath. Margaret had sunk back into her chair, the color draining from her face. I continued reading, but this isn't just about business. Margaret, my dear daughter-in-law, you've worked so hard to maintain the perfect family image, that you've forgotten what family really means. It's not about appearances or social standing, it's about standing together, especially when doing the right thing is difficult. Catherine didn't destroy this family by exposing the truth. The truth was already destroying us. She just tried to stop the bleeding. So here's my final gift to all of you, a chance to rebuild, not just the company, but our family, on a foundation of truth and integrity. The choice is yours. All my love, William. The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas was the first to break it, standing up with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, looking directly at me. I was so angry when you exposed what I'd done. I never stopped to think about how long you'd been trying to protect us all. Jessica moved to his side, squeezing his hand. We all owe Catherine an apology. Margaret remained silent, staring at the ledger in my hands. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. William always said we'd regret choosing appearance over substance. I didn't understand until now. She stood up, smoothing her skirt in a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. But instead of her usual cold demeanor, there were tears in her eyes. Catherine, she said, I was wrong. About everything. Can you ever forgive us? I looked at David, seeing in his eyes the same hope I felt. That's what family does, I replied softly. The next few hours were filled with tears, confessions, and the beginning of healing. The cousins ordered pizza, a shocking departure from the traditional formal dinner, and we sat together, reading through William's records, and really talking for the first time in years. As midnight approached, Margaret insisted we stay the night. It's Christmas Eve, she said, and this time, the whole family should be here. Later, as David and I lay in his old bedroom, he asked, did you know what was in the package all along? No, I admitted. I just knew your father wanted us to trust him. He saw what this family could be, if we were brave enough to choose truth over appearances. The next morning, Christmas dawned bright and clear. Under the tree, amid the expensive presents, sat William's old ledger, a reminder of the most valuable gift we'd received, the chance to be a real family again. Margaret insisted on taking a family photo. But this time, instead of the usual posed perfection, it was a candid shot of all of us in our pajamas, laughing and real. This one's going on the wall, she declared. No filters needed. Sometimes the best gifts can't be wrapped, and the truest family bonds are forged not in perfect moments, but in the messy, honest ones, where we choose love over appearances, and truth over comfort. William Roberts had known that all along.